Hello, my name is Karen Hallman, and I am one of the managers here at the Early Learning Coalition of Polk County. Today, we're going to go over the 2024 contract requirements for both school readiness and the voluntary pre-kindergarten program. So welcome. So for the 2024-2025 school readiness contract requirements, you will need to create your own profile. So if you're a brand new provider, you're going to go to the provider services website and you would register yourself right here as a new provider. You do need to be either exempt or you need to have a license, something like that, to put in your number so that it recognizes you, and then you will go through the whole system of answering the questions to create your account. If you're a pre-existing provider, then you're going to log in using your credentials and you're going to go from year to year, make sure you're in the correct year to access your contracts, or AKA your provider VPK application or your VPK contract. Okay, so when we talk about school readiness, we're going to go over some of the requirements, and we're not going to go over line item by line item or word by word, but what we are going to do is we're going to talk about the important pieces that are within that contracting requirement. So all forms that you need for contracting can be located on the website at elcpolk.org/contracts, and that would be for both school readiness and for VPK. Within that access for the forms that are listed on our website, there is a lovely profile checklist that you can use to make sure that you have all the information that's necessary for contracting. For school readiness, you are allowed up to 12 payable holidays. You'll see 13 on the list, but you are able to select 12 of the 13 to be paid for those particular days. Again, on that website, there's a quick little reference on how to access the provider portal and navigate through the system. These are the contacts that you can reach out to should you have any questions on how to navigate through that provider services portal. Now we're going to go through the contract and talk about the requirements of school readiness. So we're going to start with school readiness first. And so based off of your school readiness contract, under this section, the purpose of the contract is that you want to provide services to families and you're going to contract with us. Now, when we talk about payment limitations, you know that this contract is executed. And so when it's executed, that is how you're going to get paid. Now, this contract is not transferable. So what does that mean? That means should you decide that you're going to sell, or if you are moving or there's a change in ownership, something of that nature, that contract is not automatically transferable to the other entity. So each contract is unique. Each contract belongs to each educational facility that is contracted with us. So it doesn't just automatically transfer. So you need to let us know at least 30 days in advance whether or not you're having a change in ownership or you're moving, something of that nature, because we do have families that are contracted through you. So we do have to have all that information moved over. So we do ask 30 days in advance that you notify us, so there's no gap in services. So we talk about eligibility. You would fall under one of these categories here to be eligible to provide services. Now it does talk about under here, under sections C, B, C, and E. Just know that under this section, you cannot be found guilty of fraud within the last 5 years or on the USDA food program list as far as being found guilty of fraud. You do have to have a health and safety inspection, and that is a requirement within the contracting procedure. So every year you do have to have a health and safety inspection. And so based off of that, if you're a brand new provider coming in, you do have to have a clean health and safety inspection, and you have to meet those standards to come in as brand new. Same thing as when you're coming in from contract year to contract year, you need to make sure that if you have any outstanding corrective action plans, things of that nature, that has been completed and you have fulfilled that. If you happen to be put on probation, there's instances where there could be a 6-month probation depending on the severity of any violations that could occur. If that does happen, just know that that probation period that's over a 6-month can roll over from contract period to contract period. Now, when we talk about class, so class stands for the Classroom Assessment Scoring System, which is based on teacher-child interactions. Every contracted child care provider that falls under a certain, on the school readiness side, that falls under a certain enrollment, number of enrollments, so 20% is required to have a class observation. If you don't come in brand new as exempt. Once you hit that 20% as a brand new provider, then you're prompted to have a class observation. If you're a provider that's contracted with us from year to year, every year you're required to have a class observation. So based off that class observation, you have a composite score. So based off the number of classrooms that are pulled for that observation, it is calculated in a way that you have a score that comes out. And with that score, you do have to fall under a 4.0 or higher to be eligible to contract with us for school readiness services. And if you do fall below a 4.0, that's either grounds for termination of contract or non-eligibility to contract with us. Under this section, you do have to maintain your EIN and you have E-Verify. So your E-Verify is what you would have an authorization status for all newly hired employees that says that you do not employ or contract or subcontract with any authorized alien, any individuals that are unauthorized to be working in your facility. When we talk about provider responsibilities and scope of work under Section 9, so what we're saying here is that you will be paid on begin date and end date on the child certificate of eligibility. And so that is how you get paid. We talk about general health and safety. So again, please make sure that you're watching any of your violations that can occur, your ratios, making sure you do not have unscreened individuals in the classroom. So just making sure based off of that, that you're providing a healthy and safe environment for the children and supervising them within your program. We talk about background screening. So making sure through the background screening that the individuals in the classroom do meet the background screening requirements. And just know through our Early Learning Coalition, we do provide free background screening, and you can reach out to Shonda here at our Early Learning Coalition and at 863-577-2450 and ask to speak with Shonda. And she can set you up if you need that for background screening. Under this section, when we talk about program assessment and quality improvement plan, again, you cannot fall below that 4.0 to contract with us, and that is based off of that class composite score that I had mentioned previously. We talk about curriculum. Just know that based off of for school readiness, you do have to purchase a curriculum that is approved. So we do provide, again, on our website, a list of approved curriculums. They do oftentimes get updated. So when that does happen, or occasionally, we will put a revised list up there. So look at that list, see what works best for your program, and that's where you're going to make that determination on which curricula that you want to purchase. Or the curricula that you have meets the requirements for contracting for school readiness. We talk about developmental screening. So in this section, so as it states in the contract, it says that you'll be screening what's called ASQ, the children in your program, between the ages of 6 weeks up to 60 months for 45 calendar days after the child's first subsequent enrollment. So please reach out if you have any questions, because it is a requirement based off of the developmental screening requirements, and you can reach out to Melinda 2 Cantrell. And again, that's 863-577-2450. And please ask to speak with Melinda 2 Cantrell. And based off of that, she does ask that you do that within 40 days. And then when we talk about a subsequent screening, just know that you're responsible for subsequent screenings, which would be conducted annually at redetermination in accordance with what's set forth in rule. We have prohibited forms of discipline and child immunizations, so making sure that you are staying up to date on that. You are required to keep workers' compensation insurance and reemployment insurance. And just know that through the staff here at the coalition, they may ask you to see that. So it is best practices to try to keep that in your profile that you have. There is a space for that in the documents tab to upload that. And when we talk about the sign in and out process, so this is very, very important, and please pay attention to this so that you're going to say in here that you're agreeing to maintain daily attendance documentation, which includes the sign in out process, which needs to be in accordance with what's in rule. And you want to make sure that you are accurately documenting your attendance of absences, and then submitting that information as requested. So when we talk about here the responsibilities, so this is the sign in out process that's listed on your SR contract. So this is the requirement. So just making sure as you read this that your daily attendance documentation is maintained by your, as the provider, based on the terms of the standards for the school readiness contract. So under Florida Administrative Code, you must record your daily attendance using either a paper sign-in and sign out form or an electronic attendance tracking system that's maintained at your site to validate the attendance date. For electronic attendance systems, you can back up your records on a regular basis to safeguard against loss. And then your sign in and out forms will vary, but they must have the following information. You need to have the provider name, the child's first and last name, the time signed in and signed out, the date, which is the month, the day, the year, and an authorized signature or electronic attendance tracking system that records the date, child's name, an electronic signature, card swipe, entry of a person identification number, or similar daily action taken by the parent or the person dropping off the child or picking up the child to and from at the provider site, which you need to have authorized signature, your paper electronic, which includes the designee for the children who are transporting via school to and from the provider site, or a parent or a person that that parent has authorized as documented in writing on file as you, as the educator. So again, it's really critical that you are following that sign in and out process. It shouldn't be the teachers just signing the children in and out. Things happen. We do know that. If that does happen and a parent leaves, because sometimes that happens and has forgotten to sign the child out, just make sure that is the director or owner that's signing that child in and out, or somebody that's designated to do so. And that when the parent arrives, that they're initialing and attesting that they indeed are validating that that child was in attendance. Now, it shouldn't be happening often. It needs to be. And if we're seeing a repeat of staff, director, owners signing the child in and out on a daily basis, then that becomes concern. So again, making sure that it is the authorized individual from the parent that is dropping the child to and from, or the parent signing that child in and out. We talk about child absences, making sure that you are recording somehow any of your child's absences, and that you're going to notify us in writing if absences occur, and notify us of the absences. So when we talk about the Ryla-Wilson Act for at-risk children, so this is really critical. And under the Ryla-Wilson Act, which you will have access to a copy of that on the provider website that I showed you, where you could get your sign and out sheets. So under this part, this is under the requirements of that. So under those requirements, just know that you are required to, under these sections, protective service children must be enrolled to participate 5 days per week. Protective service children may not be withdrawn without prior written approval from the Department of Children and Families, DCF, or a community-based care. If a protective service child has 7 consecutive excused or any unexcused absences, the child care provider must notify the appropriate community-based care staff. The Department of Children and Care Department and child care provider must follow local protocols set up by the CBC to ensure continuity. If it is not in the best interest of the child to remain at the child care or early education program, the caregiver must work with the case manager, guardian ad litem, child care and educational staff, and educational surrogate if one has not been appointed to determine the best setting for the child. So please make sure that you are abiding by that Ryla-Wilson Act and at-risk children. And again, if your child has any unexcused absence that falls under this, you need to make sure that you are documenting that and you're following up on that protocol that we just gave you, any unexcused absence. Now, when we talk about parental choice and parental access, we know that parents need to have access and parental choice to the child care programs. We talk about the single statewide information system. That's where I showed you where you'll be working out of your provider services portal for contracting purposes. Making sure through child care resource and referral, so the information that you're sending out to parents is up to date. Nothing is more frustrating than when a parent cannot, or a coalition cannot get a hold of you because there's an incorrect email or an incorrect phone number. So please make sure that you're keeping that information up to date. Your direct deposit, please make sure if you make any changes to your direct deposit that you notify us right away, so that we can make sure that you're getting paid correctly. Orientation, just know that you are required to participate in an orientation each contract year in order to have a contract executed and initiated and certified. We talk about child assessment. So if applicable, that you agree that you can conduct a child assessment using a reliable assessor. So your assessor would need to be reliable in the tool. There is a differential incentive for this, but it needs to be completed 3 times per year, the checkpoints, and there is a requirement for the completion dates to be eligible to participate in the child assessment program. For our coalition, we do use Teaching Strategies Gold as a part of that child assessment requirement, and you can reach out again to Melinda Cantrell through our coalition for more information about meeting the eligibility requirements for child assessment. Training and technical assistance. So through our coalition, we have coaches that will work with you. We have all kinds of training opportunities. So please take time to utilize your coach and to utilize any training opportunities. Developmental and subsequent screenings, we talked about that through the ASQ. And again, if you have questions on meeting those requirements, then please reach out to Melinda Cantrell. For monitoring, so when we talk about monitoring here, so just know that we as a coalition are required to conduct different types of monitorings, which includes Tier 1 and Tier 2 monitoring. So through Tier 1 monitoring, you will be contacted where we would need to see sign in out sheets and your attendance and things like that. And through your Tier 2, which is a little more extensive, they do give you a window. There's more information that they would need to be looking at, which would be your curriculum, again, sign in out processes. So there's different things that are a requirement that you would have to meet for that Tier 1 and Tier 2 monitoring. So making sure that you are giving us physical access, so you cannot deny access to us for entry when we do have to either conduct monitorings or if we're in there doing coaching visits. When we talk about records access, making sure that through your records that you have all of your information up to date, and then if we need to access them, that you do need to give us access to like sign in out sheets, things like that, when they are requested. Records need to be kept confidential. So just making sure that you are following that protocol. And should you decide that you are going to close or there's a change in ownership, just making sure that you need to submit those records to us prior to or right as you're closing. And so it would be going back 5 years worth of records. That would be like your sign in and out sheets. That would be records of your attendance, receipts, things like that that could be pulled for an audit. You are required to maintain those for a period of 5 years. And should you again decide that you're going to close or there's a change in ownership, those records do need to be transferred over to the coalition. When we talk about methods of payment, so and the reimbursement rate, so based off of what your rates are established within the contract and in your profile, that's how you get paid. We talked about those quality performance incentive rates. Again, these are incentive rates. So based off of your class composite scores, there is an opportunity to have different types of rates that fall under there, which could be anywhere from a 4%, a 7%, or a 10% based on where you fall with your class composite score. Now, again, when I say incentive, just know that your score, should it go up or down, there is different variables that impact that based off of that incentive rate. So that means your rate could go up and down for the additional incentive. And again, if you are eligible, when we talked about Teaching Strategies Gold, there is an opportunity for an additional incentive through that, should you be eligible to offer that type of assessment. Okay, there's information in these sections based off of special needs rates, registration fees, and rate changes and limitations. So making sure that if you have any changes in your rates, please make sure that you let us know in advance so that we can properly do an amendment if it is warranted based off of the ages that you're serving, or if there's any type of impact on that. And based off of your rates, you would upload a new rate sheet. And when we talk about rates and fees for parents, under this section, that you acknowledge that you are prohibited from charging parents receiving SR services higher rates than those charged to private pay parents, and that you must provide parents with a list of any fees that you charge. Under the co-payments or graduated phase out co-payment, just know that under this is your responsibility to collect any of the fees, and that it is your responsibility to also give receipts. Under this section, we talked about the holiday schedule. So again, you have an opportunity to select 12 of the 13 payable holidays. This is an important one. Please make sure that you're listening to this piece of it. So under this section, we talk about attendance documentation. You want to get paid. So under this, right here, it says that you are going to agree to submit all required attendance records to the coalition on or before the 3rd business day of each month. If the due date falls on a holiday, you agree to submit all required attendance to the coalition on the preceding business day. Records submitted late will be processed and paid in the next open payment cycle. So making sure that you are not late on submitting your attendance. Again, that is very critical, because if you are late, they do have to close payment, and that would go the next month. Should you have an emergency temporary closure, you want to make sure that you follow the procedure, which is now through WebAuthor. You're going to add the information for a emergency temporary closure, which constitutes something such as, like, we had a hurricane, or if you had a pipe burst. So if you're just closing for a day, that you've decided that, let's just say you have a day that you want to do for a celebration day, and you've decided just to close your program on that day, that does not constitute as an emergency closure. That is something that you would log into your services portal, click on your calendar tab, and put that in as a closure date. Now, if it's an emergency closure, which again, like I said, if it's something that is like a hurricane that's occurring, or if it's something that your power has went out, or something where your pipes are not correctly working within your facility, that would constitute as emergency temporary closure. And that's where you would log into WebAuthor, into your account, and you would add under that emergency closure, you would follow that procedure, which would also move you to your profile, and you would add that information in. Under financial consequences, just know that there can be financial consequences should you be in non-compliance with your program. So Department of Children and Families, when they do health and safety inspections, sometimes dependent upon where a violation can fall, it could result in financial penalties. Discrimination is prohibited. Corrective action notice. Please make sure that should you have a corrective action notice, that you are completing it. And please make sure you're letting us know what steps you have taken to ensure that that is not going to reoccur. So what we don't want to see is like a one-line sentence that says, I'll do better next time. We want to actually see that you are taking steps to prevent that from happening. And you are required to complete those corrective action plans should you have one and you have notice of one. So please make sure that those are not just sitting out there. They do come via web author. Probation. So in some instances, depending on a violation that occur, it can result in a probation period that can be for a period up to 6 months. So again, like I had mentioned, if that does happen, just know that that would roll over. If it is a flipping contracts, that would roll over from one contract period to the next. Should you fall in that 6-month range, that goes from one contract period to another. There is termination, so just know that based on severity of violations, it could result in termination, and that the coalition does have a right to terminate a contract for cause at any time. And some of those things could be from class 1 violations, not completing or maintaining your E-Verify. So anything that could jeopardize the health and safety of children. Should Department of Children and Families terminate your license, just know that the coalition will have to follow behind that and will have to terminate the contract. Again, here's termination for health and safety violations, termination and revocation of eligibility. So just know that if you refuse to participate in program assessments, or you're not meeting the minimum contract threshold, which we said needs to be 4.0 or higher, that can result in termination of the contract. So for termination of contract by provider, so should you decide that you are going to terminate your contract, please know that you need to let us know 30 days in advance, again, because families are impacted. So that would be if you're moving or you're decided that you're not wanting to contract with the coalition anymore, we do require 30 days advance notice. So if you're suspected of fraud, which falls under USDA or any other types of fraud, just know that you would be removed from eligibility for a period of 5 years. We do have a due process procedure, and you can read up and follow that should you need to. For information change and notification, please know that you need to notify us of any of the following changes, which would be changes to your contract, emergency closures, permanent closure, which I said is 30 days advance notice, or dismissal of children, which includes documentation of specifying reason for dismissal within a timely period. Again, resource and referral participation, that your information is annually updated, that if there's any changes, that you are notifying us of any type of changes that need to be made to your resource and referral participation. Under unusual incident, so again, you're going to agree to report any unusual incidents no later than the close of business on the next business day of an unusual incident. And you agree to submit in writing a report within 3 business days from the date of the incident. If you're found guilty or of USDA or fraud, you need to let us know within 5 calendar days. Should you have any contract changes, you need to let us know no later than 10 calendar days of any changes. Under the indemnification, you can read up on that. Through amendments, Deborah Moore at our coalition does handle any type of amendments. Please make sure if you have any amendments out there that they are being completed in a timely manner because they can impact payment. And so based off of that, when you log into your provider services portal where your contracts are housed is where the amendments are. And sometimes they're hidden. There's a little plus that you have to click on to access those amendments, but making sure that those are completed. These are just exhibits that repeat some of the information that we went over. So you can read up on that. And there's a lot of information in here, so please make sure that you are reading up on your contract, that you know it. You do have access to it within our portal system. So please make sure, again, that you are reading up on your contracts. And you can see in here, talks about the reimbursement rates. This will show on yours. There will be information in there that shows what the coalition reimbursement rates are. And is broken down within your contract in this section. Under the holiday schedule in Exhibit 6, just know that some of the holidays will pull over. It will not pull all holidays, so you will be responsible to click on the holidays that you are selecting as payable holidays, and it would be a selected payable holidays that you would observe, and then there's a drop down on those holidays that don't pull over. There's a drop down date. You'll add that date, and then you'll add what the holiday is. This provides information on the due process period. Here's information about the Riley-Wilson Act that we talked about. There are training requirements for school readiness providers, so please make sure that you are following the requirements based on what that is. And there is a school readiness health and safety standards handbook. I would encourage you to please read up on that because that tells you what items need to be reviewed over so that you're maintaining the health and safety requirements for contracting for school readiness through the Department of Children and Families. And on our website, we have a quick guide to submitting your attendance for payment. Now, another thing I want to share with you is to make sure that you do not have any lapse in liability insurance. So please make sure based on your liability insurance that you are maintaining, there is no lapse insurance. If there is a lapse, that can be grounds for termination of the contract, and or each day that you have a lapse, depending on the length of it, is a non-day of payment. So any day that there is a lapse in insurance, you're not going to get paid for that day, and it could lead up to termination of your contract. So again, it is critical to make sure you're notifying us right away if there's a change in your liability insurance or making sure that there are no lapse, not any lapse with your liability insurance. We're going to flip over now to the requirements of the voluntary pre-kindergarten program. Again, welcome to the 24-25 voluntary pre-kindergarten contracting year. Again, for VPK, all of the forms for contracting can be accessed on our website at elcpolk.org/contracts. On our website, again, there's a lovely checklist that you can have to make sure that you have maintained and that you are meeting all the requirements for VPK for contracting period purposes. Okay. So based off of this contract here, the contract for VPK is the VPK 20. So on that form here, we're going to go over what the requirements are for the voluntary pre-kindergarten program. So each of you will complete an electronic SR20 form, and that again is done through our portal system. The purpose for contracting, as mentioned previously, is that you want to provide services to families for the voluntary pre-kindergarten program. We have two different types of programs. We have what's called a school year program, and we have a summer program. So for a school year program, it's based off of 540 hours. So those instructional hours, you have some flexibility on how you decide that you're going to provide that program to the families that you're serving. For a summer program, that's based off of 300 instructional hours. And so again, based on how you're offering those hours, once you're either for a school year program, 540 hours have been completed, then your program ends. And then same thing with your 300 hours for a summer program. So for a school year program, you cannot begin on or before the children go back to the public school system through Polk County, and you have to be done in rule by June 30th for the school year program. However, for us, we say a week prior to that, because if you have to make any type of modifications to your calendar, if you're right on the 30th, then there's no way you could make a modification. So we say a week before that. So that gives you some leeway. So should something happen, that you can make those modifications. For a VPK summer program, you cannot begin VPK summer on or before May 1st, and that your program has to be completed prior to the children going back to school for the fall. There are different educational requirements for the instructors as far as being a lead for a school year program versus a summer program. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Again, your contract is not transferable, and you need to let us know 30 days in advance should you decide there's a change in ownership or that you're selling, because that contract is tied to you. You'll fall under one of these categories here to be eligible to provide services. So this is the type that you would be. Again, when we talk about class, so on the school readiness side, it's based off of certain classrooms that are a random selection of certain age groups and classrooms for school readiness that will be have a class assessment. On VPK side, it's 100% of the VPK classrooms that will have a class assessment. And based off that, again, you'll get based off of meeting the classrooms and having the assessments, there's an average score that gets developed based off of those observations, those teacher-child interactions. And again, to be able to contract with us, you have to have a 4.0 or higher. So we talk about the required forms. So under this section, so you'll have what is called a child certificate of eligibility, which makes sure when you have that, so that's how you're going to get paid. And so that's what's tied to the children. When you have that, it's a two-step process. So once you're contracted, you're going to upload that child certificate into your document library. That's your step one. And that's going to go into the VPK enrollment folder in your document library. So that's where you're going to upload it. So that's step one. And then step two you're going to go into the system and you're going to electronically enter that information into your services portal. And so right when you start the contracting process, at any time you can start uploading those certificates into your document library. Once your VPK application has been in contract, there's two of them, you have an application and a contract, is certified, then right away you're going to enter that information into the proper classrooms, into the electronic system. So it's a two-step process. Okay. So we talk about assessment, right? So under this section, you can reach out to Ashley Schultz. So you are, and again, she can be reached at 863-577-2450, and it's Ashley Schultz. So based off of that, you agree that you're going to implement the coordinated screening and progress monitoring program and program assessments, what's in statute and rule. So this is from Ashley Schultz. So under the VPK FAST, beginning with the 24-25 program year, the VPK FAST test administrator must complete an annual training that's designed to ensure the proper administration of the progress monitoring. The Division of Early Learning anticipates that the annual test administrator training for the 24-25 program year will go live on May 1st in the Renaissance U. Additional information and details will come from Ashley Schultz. And if you are a provider on probation, just know that you will remain as such until you are notified otherwise, which means you will have to go ahead and complete your improvement plan, your acknowledgement, all that information that you have done previously into the system. And again, if you have questions about that, you can also reach out to Ashley Schultz. Okay, required parent information. So just know that in your application, when you are getting ready to certify your contracts, again, you have an application and you have a contract. So based off of that, you do have a program attendance policy. So your attendance policy, once it's uploaded and your information has been certified, that attendance policy covers the entire year and cannot be modified. So just make sure that you review that carefully when you are uploading that and you're submitting it. There are fees that are prohibited. So just know through VPK that you cannot charge parents any fees for services provided. Again, fees are prohibited for VPK. And that includes, when we talk about here, wrap care, you cannot force parents to participate in wrap care based off of your VPK program. We talk about instructor requirements, and this is where I was talking about there's differences. So under those instructor requirements, that you will make sure that you are meeting those requirements. So based off of which program you are offering. So for a school year program that we talked about for 540-hour programs, so the lead instructor does have to meet certain credentialing requirements. And for that, it could be in Florida, the FCCPC, there's a CDA, an NECC, associate, bachelor, master's, etc., that meets that criteria for VPK eligibility. Now, on a summer program, it's a little bit different because for a VPK summer program based off of 300 hours, that lead must meet at least the requirements of a certain types of bachelor degrees. And the ratios are a little bit different. So dependent upon the capacity of your classroom, if your classroom capacity is less than the ratio, then you have to maintain what that capacity is. However, for the sake of ratio, so just know that for a VPK school year program, that ratio is 1 lead instructor to 11 children. If you have a lead and an aide or secondary instructor, so that ratio is 2 to 20 and does not exceed that. Now for a VPK summer program, so for VPK summer, that maintains your one instructor, your lead instructor, to 12 children. And that ratio does not change. It is a 1 to 12 for a VPK summer program. And there is a class composite score for your school year program. And then if you offer a summer program, you do have a class composite score for that summer program. We talk about your substitute instructors. Just know that if you're using your substitute instructor in your classroom, that is in the absence of your instructor when that instructor is out, and there is a 30% rule with that. We talked about the Bradley-Wilson Act, and same thing as school readiness. Please make sure that you are following that as well. There is some criteria for the VPK logo. So if you are using the VPK logo, please make sure that you are referencing what is eligible and what is not eligible for using that logo. This just kind of goes back over that same information we just talked about, just in a different format. So there are different types of forms. And you can read up on that. We talk about training and technical assistance. So making sure that under the technical assistance and the training, you're utilizing training opportunities and you're utilizing your coaches. And we talk about child eligibility. Again, you have the responsibility for determining, the coalition has the responsibility for determining the eligibility of children. And so you will get issued the child certificate of eligibility. And so that certificate of eligibility is how you're going to get paid. So that certificate is tied to each of your classrooms. So you just can't be transferring them from classroom to classroom. Please know that that certificate is unique to each of your VPK classrooms, which means that child is assigned to those specific classrooms. We talk about monitoring. Again, the coalition does have the responsibility to come and monitor your program. We'll go through a certain information based off of basically like what looks like a checklist on there. And when we come into your facility, making sure that you provide physical access, you cannot deny access, making sure that you have records that are available and that we would need to review those records. Keeping your records confidential, and make sure, again, you're maintaining your records. Should you decide that you're going to close and transfer them over to us, we do need 5 years back. And so just making sure that you are, again, maintaining those records. Under the attendance documentation, again, that you agree to document your daily attendance and to certify your monthly attendance and to certify the annual cumulative attendance of each child in your program within what is in rule. So making sure that your attendance documentation is being kept up. We talk about the attendance certificate. So you have your sign-in out process, which we talked about a little bit with the school readiness. So if you're using what's called a parental choice certificate, there's two different forms. They both basically do the same thing. So we have a long version and we have a short version. So you'll hear your short form or your long form. The long form is used on a daily basis. You go in every day and then you'll check that every day for the child, where the short form is used at the end of the month, each month. So just making sure that that information is being completed correctly. So on your, if you're using your short form or your long form, making sure you have the correct classroom, you have, make sure that the parents are signing and dating the forms correctly. And again, that is going to be at the end of each month. So you have your sign-in out process and you have your parental choice certificates, which is either your short form or your long form. So making sure that you are using those forms correctly. Same thing with direct deposit, making sure you're notifying us right away if there's any changes to your direct deposit. Advance payment option. So there is an option if you want to do advance payment, you would collect on or check on that when you're when you're doing your contracting process. Not everybody wants to do advance payment, hence the name advance. Just know that the money is given to you in advance. Should something happen and you don't have enrollments or something like that, you are required to pay that advance back. And that's where you would check this based on either a school year program or a summer program. Just this talks about the end of year reconciliation, what the steps are for that. Attendance documentation. Again, you agree to submit monthly attendance in accordance with what is set forth in the rule, and that you agree to submit all required attendance records to the coalition on or before that third business day of each month. If the due date falls on a holiday, that you're going to agree to submit all the required attendance records to the coalition on the preceding business day. Records that are submitted late, again, that are late, will be processed and paid in the next payment cycle, which means if they are not submitted on time, that's going to go in the next month. Again, any closures, they're going to be handled in accordance with what's set forth in rule. And again, if you have an emergency closure, you're going to follow that process of submitting that emergency closure through WebAuthor, and then it'll go to your provider services portal. So it'd be for things, like I said, such as a hurricane or something of that nature. These are just the different types of schools. You can read up on that, Head Start or Title 20 schools. Ashley talked about the performance metric, the information that I provided to you from her. If you have additional questions about that, please reach out to her, as well as provider on probation. We talked about that. Should that happen, discrimination is prohibited. Non-compliance for corrective actions. Again, should that happen, should you be in non-compliance, you do have to complete a corrective action plan. Please make sure that you are doing those timely once you receive the notification. And failure to complete those corrective action plans could result in further action and or termination. And again, if there's class 1 violations, failure to complete the E-Verify, that can result in termination or termination for cause. Or if there is, if you're found guilty of fraud or USDA, that could be a period for 5 years for that. Other types of termination can be from 2 to 5 years. If there's an emergency termination, which again, we mentioned that if Department of Children and Families for any reason had to do an emergency closure, we do have to terminate, we do have to follow suit. This is revocation of eligibility. Again, termination of a contract by the provider. So should you decide that you are going to terminate your contract, which could be moving or that you no longer want to provide services, please make sure that you notify us within 30 calendar days. Again, here's termination for fraud. If you're found guilty of fraud, again, you need to let us know within 5 days. There is a due process procedure that can be followed should you decide you want to do that. Information change. So under this section, please know that if there is a change, you are required to let us know, a change in your VPK application, which is your instructors, making sure you're staying up to date in your portal of any instructor changes, any calendar changes. You need to make sure that you are letting us know. Or if you fall below that threshold and we have to conduct an additional assessment, that you are notifying us whether or not you are planning on doing that. Child care resource and referral. Again, please making sure that your information is up to date in there. Your emails, contact information, phone numbers. Unusual incidents, again, that you agree to report an unusual incident no later than the close of business on the next business day of the unusual incident, and that you need to submit to us something in writing within 3 business days. And that would be anything that impacts the health and safety of the children in your program. Notification of disqualification, talked about that. The indemnification process, you can read up on that. Amendments, we don't see amendments too often on the VBK side, but if you do have an amendment, again, making sure that you've reached out to Deborah Moore and completed that amendment in a timely manner. There are specific director requirements for VBK, so making sure that your VBK director does have the VBK endorsement. And again, when we talk about liability insurance, making sure that there is no lapse in liability for the VBK program. Should there be a lapse in liability, again, there's non-payment for every day that there is a lapse, which can lead up to termination of the contract. And making sure that the director that is assigned to your program is there majority of the time. And that is a requirement, especially for the VBK program. This talks just a little bit about the due process procedure. The VBK director being approved in the requirements, access to your facility, liability requirements, workers' comp requirements. On our website, we do have a VPK monitoring reminder. So when we come out and monitor your program, again, these are things that we would be looking at. And that is accessible on our website. Here is the Riley-Wilson Act. You can access a quick guide to attendance submission on our website. You are not required to follow the school district instructional calendars for dates that they will be off. Some programs do want to follow the closure dates of the school district. There is a calendar accessible. Should you decide that's something that you want to do, you can review that. And that typically, if people follow that procedure, it averages out to about 3 hours a day. If you follow the closure dates that they have set with district. Now, again, you're not required to have to follow those specific dates. It's based off of, like I said, a school year program is based off of 540 hours. You do have to have, for each classroom for VPK, you do have to have 4 enrollments, and you do have to have 4 children present on that first day of VPK to provide those services per classroom. And that was what I was talking about here, the VPK director endorsement requirements. There are training requirements for the lead instructors. They do have to have an emergent literacy requirement and meet that to be eligible to be the lead, as well as the credentialing requirements. And these are different selections that they can choose from to make sure that they have met those requirements. Good moral character. So this does need to be completed for any of the director, the leads, the aides, the substitute instructors at the facility. There is a good moral character that does need to be completed, as well as the background screening. All information, including the second page, needs to be completed with the signatures. And it would be signature, final signature would be signature of owner/director. This is where I was talking about the attendance parental choice certificate. This is the short version. So again, it would be the child's first name, middle name, and last name, child's date of birth, name of the child care facility, what VPK class that child is assigned to. And then this is the attendance month and year, and then the printed parent's name. This needs to be the signature of the parent and the date that they signed off at the end of the month. And this needs to be completed on this version each month at the end of the month. It attests that the child was indeed in that program for that month. And these are the credentialing requirements that are also on our website for either a school year program or a summer program. Again, there's information on there of the VPK logo usage. And direct deposit information and things of that nature you can find on our ELC website. Again, welcome, and we were glad to have you contract with us for the 2024-2025 School Readiness and VPK program. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us here at the Coalition. I can be reached at 863-577-2450 extension 307 for contracting purposes, or you can reach out to Deborah Moore, and that is 863-577-2450 extension 221, or Karen Hallman at elcpolk.org, or Deborah Moore at elcpolk.org. Thank you and have a wonderful day.